This is your PowerPoint for the PowerPoint quiz on Rome and China. The Roman Republic. Originally, the Roman Republic was isolated by the mountain range, the Apennines, and the Adriatic Sea. The Etruscans had trained the Romans in farming and animal husbandry. The Romans ended up establishing under this republic a senate led by two consuls. The major problem or conflict throughout this time period of the Roman Republic was between the patricians, or the landowning class, and the plebeians, or the commoners. The patricians were the large landowners. Plebeians did have some land, but tended to be more of a common part of society, owning a small amount of land. The early Roman government. The plebeians and the patricians fought over land ownership and political power. Eventually, this led to the plebeians demanding more representation, and they won, getting a new council of the plebs. But the problem was this only created a larger group of landowners, some with more land than others. So, this ended up just continuing the conflict with the remaining plebeians and the plebeians and patricians that had allied together. The Punic Wars. There were three major foreign wars fought between Rome and Carthage. In the first war, Rome won, but realized they needed a navy. In the second war, Carthage tried to get its revenge when Hannibal crossed over the Alps and almost destroyed Rome. Rome fought back and was able to defeat the Carthaginians. And then, in the third war, Rome decided to end this problem altogether and instigated and destroyed Carthage through this third war so that it would never return again. In fact, Rome went to Carthage after it had defeated them, burned the empire to the ground, and then salted the earth so that nothing could grow from that part of the world again. This led, though, to a transition towards the Roman Empire. The transition was due to two cases. First of all, the inequality of land led to internal tensions. Gaius and Tiberius Gracchus tried to redistribute land. They were assassinated by the nobles. Also, there was an external threat from Carthage. Because of that threat, the Senate had given emergency powers to the military, and this was led by the first triumvirate, Crassus, Caesar, and Pompey. This first triumvirate, made up of Crassus, Caesar, and Pompey, led to a battle within between these three leaders for power. Crassus died in battle. Caesar then came into Rome and defeated Pompey. Caesar then redistributed land to the poor in order to win over their support. The Senate eventually had a disagreement with Caesar, which led to his assassination by the Senate. Accomplishments of the empire. The Emperor Trajan created welfare programs for the poor. The Emperor Hadrian created public works and massive roads and aqueduct projects for the Roman Empire. All of these emperors ended up connecting Rome to the Silk Road trade route with China. Decline of the empire. Some of the major reasons why the Roman Empire eventually declined included, number one, the military leaders gaining more power. Number two, the population declined, and this led to less tax revenues for the overall needs of the empire. Number three, the military had to rely upon foreign mercenaries due to these less tax revenues and less population. And number four, invasions from the outside due to the movement of what were called the steppe people and other tribes. The steppe people were people who came from the areas just north of Afghanistan, and they had been moved out time and time again as the Chinese Empire grew. This then pushed more and more of these steppe people towards the west and towards the Roman Empire, where they eventually attacked and would eventually destroy the Roman Empire in 400 AD. Roman culture and religion. The Romans adopted the values and culture of the Greeks. They adopted the same gods, just changed their names, as the Greeks, showing human frailties. Also, there were other types of philosophies and religions, for example, the Stoics, who emphasized the sense of internal peace and natural law, and mystery religions that stressed emotions and secret connections with the divine. The classical Chinese empires. The main dynasties of the Chinese Empire originally included the following: the Chu, the Qin, and the Han. The initial founders of China were farmers. They had been influenced by the Indo-Europeans. These initial empires or dynasties developed a sense of respect for elders that led to ancestor worship of the dead. The Chu. The Chu created the Middle Kingdom, which stretched from the Huanghe to the Yangtze. They rebelled against the Shang. To justify the rebellion, they created the Mandate of Heaven. Under the mandate of heaven, the idea was that the Chinese were allowed to rebel against a leader if the leader violated the natural laws of the divine. The Chu then created the focus of balance between groups in the kingdom and the need for harmony. The Qin. The Chu eventually collapsed due to internal fights with regional leaders. Qin Shi Huangdi became the leader of the next dynasty. He ended a long period known as the Era of the Warring States, a civil war in the Chinese area. The previous instability allowed him to establish a highly centralized government that followed the philosophy of Chinese legalism. He established a standard currency, weights, and measures for the kingdom. He also provided for the protection of the northern boundaries by building the Great Wall. He also established major irrigation projects. When Qin died, the nobility rose up against the empire and took over because of Qin's absolute control. Lu Ban created a notion called state Confucianism. Under this idea, the government would have strict control but would share power with local nobles. Also, the nobles would have to compete for power by taking civil service tests, showing their ability to have true merit. Lu Ban expanded the empire into Vietnam and Korea. He also created the Silk Road trade route connecting up with India and Rome. School of 100 Philosophies. Right before the end of the era of warring states, a number of philosophies arose. Confucianism, which was started by Kangfuzi, who wrote the Analects, stressed balance and harmony. It called for hierarchy, responsibilities, and duties of the classes and families. And it emphasized practical over abstract thought. For Confucianists, heaven might exist, God might exist, but we can't know that for certain. So it's much more important that we emphasize practical and basic types of relationships in order to make society work. Taoism, which was started by Laozi. He emphasized natural law, which was an attempt to achieve balance through the simple and humble life. In his belief, you ought to act spontaneously and let nature take its course, since everything is changing all around us. The well-field system. The main economy in China was agricultural. China stressed agriculture because it was the basis to family and community. I can't stress this enough. This will be important for the rest of the year. For China, agriculture is the basis to everything up until the 20th century. Agriculture allows for family responsibilities and Confucianism and all of the relationships between the major classes. Trade and merchants were seen as a necessary evil. They were feared for bringing in new and foreign cultures. So the emperor created a system called the well-field system, which was a system of connecting responsibilities. The nobles would provide land for peasants to farm on, and the peasants would then farm on that land both for the nobles and the emperor.